Yeah, you're on the Hillbilly Voodoo channel. In the last episode, we left you guys hanging with your junk dangling in the wind. We had this rotor on here, and our caliper was not going to fit over the top. So we took this rotor. We did the exact same thing that we did to this rotor. So now we're all back in the swing of things here, and you guys can put your junk away. What we're going to do this week is figure out how we're going to mount this caliper on here so that we can make this modified front Toyota brake rotor and brake caliper stop our 1-ton hubs. Stick around, see what type of hillbilly voodoo I got to do to get this stuff to work. Yeah, put your junk away. So, in order for us to get this caliper mounted on here, we actually have to mount it onto our axle tube. Now, like a dummy, when I chopped all these axle tubes apart and stuff, I cut off the mount that had the brake drum backing plate mounted to it. Well, it probably wouldn't matter anyways, because it wouldn't have been in the right spot. So, what I have to do is build a mount on the axle tube that this can bolt to. Now, I think I'm going to build this in 2 parts. And the cat's going to help me. So, I'm going to take this plate of steel, mount it up in the lathe, and I am going to bore a hole in it so that it will go over top of this axle tube. Yeah, is that a good idea, Daniel? Yeah. So, see, this is how you guys know that this channel isn't bullshit. So we're building this out of complete junk. I got a cat running around, a bunch of ducks quacking in the background. Yeah. It is what it is, guys. It's not fake. So anyways, back to what I was trying to get out of my mouth here. I'm gonna bore a hole in this plate, the same size as this axle tube. And I think that if I do this properly, I can make the hole nice and round and everything on the lathe. And then I can split the plate in half, and then I'll have 2 plates, one for this side, one for the other side. It kind of sort of makes sense in my head. And when I say that I'm going to make this mount in 2 pieces, I mean 1 piece will mount onto here, and then I'll probably need to build some type of weird brackety type thing that mounts this caliper right in the center. So anyways, enough with this yapping. Let's actually do. Now this might be a little bit of a no-brainer for you people that know how to do machining and know how to work a lathe and all that other crap, but I'm just learning. So here you go. I found center on this plate, scribed a line across from each corner, center punched it, and I've taken a chunk of old pipe, faced it off so it's nice and flat, and I'll show you how I'm gonna stick that plate onto that piece of pipe, whatever that is, in a nice centering style fashion. Yeah, that sounds professional. So can you guys kind of sort of see what I'm doing here? I'll try to do this without getting my big fat head in the way and my arms in the way and all that other stuff, but yeah, my camera skills are probably about as good as my machining skills. Taking my center point, my live center, putting the point of our metal on there, pushing it up against my lathe chuck and that piece that we mounted in there. Now that should be about as centered as center can be, and hopefully with that piece faced off, it's about as flat as it can be. Now I have to admit that I totally stole this idea off of one of the Pakistani machining fixing thing channels. So if you guys are interested in learning how to do things like this that are pretty rudimentary, but they actually show you how to do things, maybe you should go watch some of those channels. They're kind of neat. But anyways, yap. Gonna weld this plate to the piece that we have in the chuck there, and then I'm gonna bore my hole through. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Now that I got our piece of steel tacked in here, I can back my tailstock out of the way, and I measured our axle, and we have 80, what is that? 85 millimeters. So we're going to need 42 and a half. Kind of sucks when your eyeballs stop working when you get older. So we got 42. Oh, that's 43. 42 and a half millimeters. And we're going to go scribe a line. We're going to use that line right there. We're going to line up the bit on that line. We're going to scribe a hole around all the way, and we're going to bore that out so it fits over our axle tube. I got the point of my bit lined up with that little scribed line there. I'm going to fire the machine up, and we're going to scribe a line all the way around, and then we'll use that as our reference for the boring out the hole. I got that line scribed all the way around there now, so that'll give us our distance that we need to bore that out. Now before I get carried away here, when I'm done boring this hole out, I'm splitting this plate in half, so we have one for left side, one for right side, right? So be splitting this plate in half, so we got the center hole there now. We got a nice square edge here. I figure if we take our square, line it up with the center hole, and scribe the line now, and we should be golden when it comes time for cutting this thing apart, not having to guess where the center of the circle is, right? So got a fairly good positive line there. Now I'll start boring that out, and hopefully this is going to work out the way I want. Now if we've done this correctly, we can cut on that line, and it'll give us two pieces that we can put over top of the axle, have holes drilled in for our caliper to mount. So let's go chop this in half, see if we measured that hole proper. Now that we got our plate chopped in half here, we have two pieces, one for this side and one for the other side. And this will mount somewhere around in here. And we'll put the caliper on there. We're going to need something to connect from here, this area, down to here. So I have the bracket that I built for the smart tank here. It's contoured to the caliper, bolts in there. So I'm just going to repeat this piece here so that it can bolt to this piece here. It's different, by the way, because this axle tube's substantially bigger around than the one that's in the smart tank, and the distance from the axle tube to where it mounts to is going to be different because of the size of the axle tube. Blah, blah, blah. You guys are probably figuring that out by now. So I'm going to take this copy it onto, I've got some pretty thick pieces of steel here. I'm going to take that and copy that profile onto there. Drill some holes through, and then we'll bolt it all together. And once we get it all bolted together and set on the caliper set onto the rotor with lots of clearance and everything, then we can tack this bottom bracket right to the axle. And hopefully everything will be all lined up and yeah, where it should be. So I took that piece of steel, I drilled some holes in it, and I ground it down to the kind of the profile that fits on here, just like the other one we had. Now I've taken a piece of steel fuel line, just a rusty chunk of old junk that was laying on the ground, and I put it on the top of the rotor so that I can space the caliper off the rotor and get the pads spaced properly. So I'm going to stick this on here like that. So right now, you guys might not be able to see, but you might be able to. The rotor is, I would say about, maybe an 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little bit, maybe 1/4 of an inch. The rotor is 1/4 of an inch lower than the top of the pad. So what I'm going to do is take a hammer and slowly flatten out this piece of fuel line or brake line or whatever the heck it is. I'm going to flatten this out until those pads are right level with the top of that rotor. And I'm hoping this is going to work. I've never done this before. I usually just kind of eyeball it, and if this works out, it'll make things a hell of a lot easier than just eyeballing it. So let's flatten this out a bit. Just stick some more tape on there. Pretty damn close there, but not quite, so we'll go down just a hair more. And that's a metric hair, not an imperial hair. Damn close there. I'll go just a little bit more. I would say that's damn near right on the money there. So now we can drill some holes through here into that plate. We'll thread the plate that the caliper is already mounted to. We'll just drill through and then thread the backside, and then we can thread bolts through. Is that making sense? Yeah, that's totally making sense. I'll see if I can give you guys a shot of what I was talking about here without making you seasick. That right there is the top of the rotor. That's our fuel line. Top of the rotor. Top of the brake pad. So that's pretty much right in line. pad's a little tiny bit lower than the top of the rotor, which is okay. Should make the rotor or the pads wear properly. Yeah, that little trick kind of worked out. So now we'll go ahead and poke some holes in here so that we can poke some holes through there and into that plate. Yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about. Let's go drill them. Stop talking. Now, before we drill those holes, I did notice one thing here is that we're probably going to have a little bit of interference here with the caliper and the hub, but that's not really a big deal. I can either just stick the hub in the lathe and turn this spot where the lug nut goes, or the wheel stud goes through, can turn it down a little bit for clearance, or I could just take the grinder and give it a little bit of a nip. It's like just barely touching there. Actually, I don't even think it's actually touching, but just to be on the safe side, we can clearance that a little bit. And yeah, that should work. Got all our holes drilled in our brackets there. Everything's all bolted together, stuck in there where it should be. Now I'm going to tack that plate in place onto the axle. Hope that I got everything all lined up properly. I have the center of the casting line on the caliper centered on the rotor. So hopefully that's right in the middle, unless Toyota has messed up on their castings, but that could be a possible thing. So anyways, let's tack that in there. We'll take that chunk of fuel line out of there and see if this thing spins roundy round or if it's gonna start banging into everything and we're gonna have to start over again. So I ripped our chunk of brake liner fuel. I think, yeah, it's brake. Might actually be vacuum. Anyways, I pulled our little shim out of there now. And as suspected, it's just barely touching. You hear that? Just scraping. So I'm gonna grab the grinder and just, like I said, just nip off the little edges here. Well, I more or less just had to clean up the bumpiness on the casting and it seems to be good to go. A little bit of warpage on that rotor, but not too much, so I think we're gonna call that a thing. Now, all I have to do is repeat all this on that side, but I'm gonna have to take the tire off of that side first to, yeah, take the hub off, take the, oh wow, yeah, that tire was kind of a pain to get on there. But anyways, it's got to be done, so it's got to be done. So I'm sitting here staring at this freakishly huge hillbilly party balloon of a tire, deciding or procrastinating on whether I'm going to take it off or not, so that I can finish the brakes. But I figure that I can build all the pieces that I need by copying the ones on the others, or on the side that we've done. So maybe I'll leave that tire on there and start working on what we're going to do for the body, because we need to start mounting the brake controls and the throttle controls and the shifter controls and all that stuff, and it's going to be kind of hard to do that without a body on it. So with that tire on there, I can do a little bit of cardboard aided design here and figure out what we're going to do for somewhat of a body, passenger compartment, cockpit, whatever the hell you want to call it, on the front of this machine. Now, I was totally going to build a frame of this body out of square stock, and I traded a guy a whole bunch of car parts for a big huge pile of steel, and well, short story, he got his, I didn't get mine. So we're going to have to come up with a different idea from using some square tubing. So I do have some, I think it's probably around 20 gauge, maybe 18 gauge steel, flat steel, that we're going to try to build. I guess it would be like a rib style frame, body, whatever you want to call it. So I've cut out a piece of cardboard here in kind of the shape that I'm thinking about for the side of the frame. Might be kind of hard to figure it out here, but it's going to be like that. Give us clearance to the tire, go down and mount to the side of the frame, and spread the body out a little bit more kind of idea. Now we're going to have to fabricable this all together out of this sheet metal. We won't be able to bend all these complex bends and stuff. Just, yeah, I got an idea. I got a plan here. No, we don't got a plan. Plans are what other people screw up for you. I got an idea. So I'll take you out and I'll show you what metal I'm going to use for this. And you guys can determine whether I'm completely out to lunch on this or not. Now this is what I have for my sheet steel. You're probably like, what kind of drugs are you on now? Well, this is my old wood-fired boiler that I have out in front of my shop. It's been in play for probably about 10 years now, and it's starting to get to a point where I'm pretty sure that the inside is going to be developing leaks. So the boiler is getting rebuilt this year. If you guys want to see that whole process, maybe I'll do a couple videos on that. But anyways, this stuff, the outside of this is an old fuel tank. That's what it was built out of originally. And I don't know if you can see how thick that is or not, but maybe better than, that's almost 1/8 of an inch thick. So I figure if I chop chunks out of this, which I've already started kind of peeling pieces off of it for other projects, but I figure if I chop chunks off of this, it will, one, get it out of my way so that the new boiler can be built, and two, I can use the steel that's there for other projects like the one we're working on now. So let's get the chopping. I'm gonna remove the top first here and see if this kind of goofy plan is actually going to work or not, and if it does, then we can keep on salvaging the rest of it. Quite a bit of flat steel there. We're going to have to take the curl out of it a bit, but it's not that thick. I'm sure a 350-pound vanilla gorilla jumping up and down on it'll flatten it out pretty good. So let's get the chopping here. hopefully we got that all cut through there now. I can pull that piece out of there. Okay. Yeah. Yummy. Seems that our friendly neighborhood pack rat has built himself a home down in there, and it is currently on fire. So I think I'm gonna let this pack rat home burn itself out so I don't have to clean it up, and then we'll fish that piece of steel out of there. Yeah, that really stinks and it's gross. Well, I managed to rescue our piece of metal out of the burning pack rat palace, and I have loaded our cardboard aided design onto here, cut out a piece in the shape of our cardboard aided design, our CAD file. Now, it is a good thing that you guys don't have smell-o-vision, because burning pack rat nest kind of smells like somebody loaded their bong from the drippings out of Chinese food restaurant dumpster, and yeah, it's unexplainable. I couldn't video it and not, yeah, I was gagging so hard it was unbelievable. But anyways, got our steel cut out here now. I'm gonna cut out a few more in the same pattern, and I think I'm gonna punch some holes in there and maybe try to dimple die it a little bit, because it's pretty thin. But anyways, I will cut out a few more here and clean them up. There's a little bit of scaly rust on there, but not too bad. So we should be able to use this metal, and if it works the way I think it's going to work, it'll be cool. And this here is my super fancy homemade dimple die or apparatus. It's just a nut it's actually an old lug nut off of a 1-ton vehicle, a piece of pipe with a washer, and the inside of that washer has been kind of smoothed out into a bit of a concave. I believe it's a 5/8 bolt, and I'll show you kind of how it works. I haven't used it in a really long time, like probably 20 years, so it might take a little bit of practice here. I have bored holes into our little cutouts. I've only done 2 cutouts so far, because if this whole goofy idea doesn't work, then I don't really want to waste a bunch of metal. But let's see if we can dimple die these and make them slightly more, well, less like noodles. So this is kind of how this works, if it's going to work on this metal. If I remember, I actually built this for much thinner steel. So poke it through like that. Kind of tighten it up till we get the concave part of this nut centered in the hole. Now, if I remember correctly, I used I did use a 5/8 hole saw. And 5/8 hole saw makes slightly bigger around hole than 5/8, so got it kind of centered in there. Now let's see if this is going to work or not. Now it's put a dimple in there, fairly good one, but it has distorted that metal severely. So I don't know if we're gonna. know if that's such a good idea or not. If we end up doing that, then we're gonna have, yeah, it's gonna increase the rigidity of that, but that's a hell of a warp to take out of there, because we need these straight, right? Yeah. Maybe that's not such a good idea. Well, let's do a couple more here and see how bad it actually gets. Yeah. Let's keep doing something that doesn't work and see how bad it gets. God. Maybe I should be a politician. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that maybe the effort's not going to be worth the reward here, guys. So maybe we'll just leave this whole dimple dyeing idea. Well, I'm going to go whack this on the anvil, and then I'll bring it back, and we'll decide whether the dimple dye idea is a good one or not. So I think we're going to huck that whole dimple dye idea out the window here. The amount of stiffness that I got out of the metal really wasn't worth having to try to straighten the big arc back out. So if you guys haven't figured this out yet, we're going to be making a rib, kind of like this. Guess it's more or less going to be just like having a square piece of steel, but we're making a square piece of steel and we're welding it all together. So this works, I'll be a hero. If it doesn't work, well, maybe I won't even show it to you guys. No, I'll show it to you guys. It's not the way I roll. You guys get to see all the screw ups and the mistakes and all that other stuff. So I'm gonna start tacking this together. And my longtime subscribers know that I don't do any welding on camera because of all the cursing and swearing and all that other stuff. Now, while I was sitting here cleaning up all this steel, I seem to have a lot of thoughts that go through my head while I'm sitting there grinding. You guys ever work with somebody who just won't shut up? Like, all they do is talk and talk and talk and just yap, 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 kind of like what I'm doing now. And then when you're at like a work function and you finally meet their significant other and you realize that the reason they're talking at work is because they're not allowed to talk anywhere else, or that nobody ever pays any attention to them. Well, guys, or girls, here's your chance. Make a comment. Put a comment in the comment section. I actually read this stuff. You can comment all you want. You can do it quietly so that nobody's knowing that you're doing it. And maybe your voice will get heard. And while you're at it, hit the subscribe button and the thumbs up button and all that other YouTube stuff. So I'm going to tack this together and we're going to find out whether our goofy little rib idea here is going to actually work, and whether we're going to have to make some more, or whether we're going to have to come up with a different idea. Maybe I'll have to make comments on my own videos so I can stop talking. Well, I got our rib thing all welded together here now, and it seems like it's pretty strong. I might put some pieces on the inside here just to cross over, but I don't really know if I need it. I am definitely going to cap the other side with something, but I think that maybe I'll leave it open until we decide, or until we get it on the machine itself, because I'm going to need to coat the inside of this with something, like maybe some weld through primer or something. I don't have any right now, but it obviously is going to need some type of non-rusting type of thing. So let's kind of size this up on our project here and see if this is actually going to be a real thing, or if we just welded a bunch of pieces of steel together and made some art. Well, let's stick this thing in here with some clamps and see if it's, oh God, if it's going to work the way I think it's going to work. If it seems like I'm jumping around all over the place on this project, not really finishing anything, and that's totally because I am. It's the way my brain works. If I focus too much on one thing and just keep grinding away on one thing, nothing ever gets done. If I bounce from one project or one part of the project to another, it eventually all works out. So, it's just the way it is, guys. We'll call it suspense. How about that? I'm keeping you in suspense. Yeah, that's bullshit. That's just the way my brain works. Well, that's clamped in there. It's not straight yet. And when I do finally decide everything, I will put a level on it and level it out properly. Like about there. We'll stand back here and take a look at it, see if that's what I want. Our little rib is clamped on there now where it's damn near close to level. It's not perfect, but it's within a half a bubble of my level. Kind of looks like we got enough clearance for the tire. And looks like it's going to be a real thing. Now I'm just going to build 3 more of those exactly the same so that I can, we'll put another one back there by the Robson drive. I've decided that I'm going to make the cab kind of like a pickup style cab, have the back open. I can always close the back in later, but make it look more fat truck style than Sherp style. But the front one, I'll make another 2 for the front that will be slightly different. But yeah, that looks like it's going to work. So I think I'm going to leave this episode here on a good note. I'll go and cut up a bunch of more of that stinky pack rat metal and make 3 more of these things. So until next time, guys, use what you got to make what you want, and I'll see you later.